Hi, boys and girls, and welcome to this YouTube read along of Promises to Keep. We're going to be going through pages 30 to 39, and it's likely that we will run out of time on one recording. So let's call this pages 30 to 39, part 1. So please have your book open to page 30. Please make sure that you're reading along, not just listening, but reading along. That will help you to be able to decode words and help you with your vocabulary. And we're going to start on page 30. The title is Play Ball. And it says, 4 months after Dad signed with the Montreal Royals, my parents got married. The Reverend Carl Downs performed the ceremony on February 10, 1946, at the Independent Church of Christ in Los Angeles. My mother's mother, Zellie Issam, was thrilled to plan the entire wedding right down to selecting Mom's china, silver, and crystal. It was wartime, so materials were hard to find. Still, Zellie insisted that my mother wear a satin dress. So, Mom went to Saks Fifth Avenue and found a pre-war satin sample wedding dress that had a long train. Dad matched Mom's elegance in a sharp pair of formal wear as they pledged a lifetime of love and shared dreams. And you can see that the photograph here looks like a wedding picture, doesn't it? It says, my parents believed that marriage was the most important and fulfilling commitment that adults could make. Together, they reached for this ideal. On page 31 at the top, it says, 18 days later, my parents began the long trek across the country so that Dad could report to the Royals training camp in Daytona Beach, Florida. Branch Rickey had broken his own rule about not having wives at spring training and had invited my mother to join Dad. When Dad and Mom arrived in New Orleans, they were forced to give up their seats on the plane. Then they were bumped from the next 2 flights. To add to the humiliation, they quickly discovered that because they were now in the heart of the South, they couldn't eat in the coffee shop. Luckily, Mally, a Southerner, had anticipated trouble and had packed my parents a lunch. 12 hours later, Mom and Dad flew from New Orleans to Pensacola, where they took a segregated bus to Daytona Beach, Florida. It was a rough start, and shades of things to come. My father joined black pitcher Johnny Wright and 200 white players for the Royals practice. Eager newspaper reporters from New York, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Montreal, and Brooklyn fired questions at the 2 black men. What are you going to do if the pitchers start throwing at you? Duck, Dad joked. Would you like to play for the Dodgers? Do you think you're good enough to play with Brooklyn now? Dad answered confidently. He told the reporters that he'd played with white players before, and he was sure he'd make it through the minor leagues and onto the Brooklyn Dodgers team. After practice, the white players went to the Mayfair Hotel. My parents, Johnny Wright, and black sports writers Billy Rowe and Wendell Smith were housed in the black community, either in a motel or a private home. They ate their meals in black restaurants. Through it all, Mom and Dad were inseparable. Let's look at the photographs on page 31. It says Dad fields questions from reporter Wendell Smith during spring training. And at the bottom, Dad and Mom board a bus heading for the Montreal Royals spring training in Daytona, Florida. Let's turn the page. If we take a look on page 32, the caption says, what I love about my parents' letters is that they always began with darling. And if you look at this on page 32, you will see that it starts out darling, and it is indeed a letter. Now at the top, we have something that says Netherland Plaza, Cincinnati. And this is most likely from a hotel or a place where Jackie was staying, and they provide stationery, that's paper, and then we have this at the top. Let's take a look at the next page on 32. The day after they arrived, the Royals traveled south to Sanford, Florida for a week of spring training. As it turned out, Sanford was less welcoming than Daytona Beach. A few days into the training, Wendell Smith and Billy Rowe rushed my parents and Johnny Wright out of town because of threatened violence. Dejected, Dad said he wondered if the same thing would happen in the next town. The Royals moved their practice back to Daytona Beach and had no further problems until they played games in Jacksonville and DeLand, Florida. The Royals front office finally had to switch their remaining games back to Daytona Beach. During games, proud black fans crowded into the Jim Crow, or segregated, section of the field. The Royals' black players and white players worked as a team. Let's go back up there. It says, during games, proud black fans crowded into the Jim Crow, or segregated, section of the stands, while curious white fans filled in the remaining seats. On the field, the Royals' black players and white players worked as a team. That's better. When the game ended, they returned to their separate worlds. After a successful spring training, the integrated Montreal Royals took to the field at Roosevelt Stadium in Jersey City, New Jersey, for the start of the 1946 season. Opening day was April 14, 1946. There were 35,000 excited fans in attendance. Because school was closed, there were a lot of kids in the stands. It was a clear, sunny, brisk day, more a football kind of day than baseball. Vendors sold coffee to help keep the crowd warm. The mood was electric as the mayor paraded on the field with celebrities and players for the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner. Dad hit a home run in the third inning with 2 men on, singled 3 times, and stole 2 bases. Montreal won the game 14-1. The fans mobbed Dad afterward, asking for autographs and wishing him well. After the Jersey City opener, the Royals headed to Montreal, Canada. My parents were pleasantly surprised by the warmth and friendliness shown to them by the French Canadians. Let's look at the photograph on this page. What do you notice? The caption reads, Dad said he got a kick out of hearing the announcers at Montreal's stadium call his name out in French. He said it helped him escape the pressure of being Jackie Robinson. For that split second, he imagined himself to be just the new Montreal second baseman. Let's turn the page. On the top of page 34, Sharon continues to tell us the story. She says, the Royals had different experiences in each city they played. Syracuse, New York, was worse than Sanford, Florida. During one game, while my father stood in the batter's box, a Syracuse player tossed a black cat toward him, yelling, "Hey, Jackie, there's your cousin clowning on the field." Years later, Dad told me he had been furious, but that he had responded by smacking the ball for a double. A few moments later, a base hit sent him home with the winning run. As Dad rounded third base, he shouted to the players on the Syracuse bench, I guess that relative of mine is happy now, isn't he? In Baltimore, Maryland, the Royals learned there had been letters and calls threatening violence and a boycott if my father appeared on the field. The Montreal Royals played as scheduled. There were 3,415 people at the first game of the series. The small crowd was tense and angry, but as the Montreal and Baltimore series continued, the audience's mood changed. My father stole home during one game. The fans gave him a standing ovation. Dad was big news when he got some big news himself. Mom announced she was pregnant. Dad was on the road, but Mom couldn't wait for him to come home. She called Dad, thrilled to report that they were going to have their first baby. Dad was so sure his firstborn would be a boy that he later wrote back a joyous letter, adding that he would make his son proud of him. Dad made good on that promise. During his one season with Montreal, he won the batting championship with a .349 average, scored 113 runs, ranked second in the league in stolen bases, and was voted most valuable player in the International League. The Montreal Royals won the pennant and the Little League World Series. Today, the 1946 Royals are regarded as one of the greatest teams in the history of minor league baseball. Boys and girls, let's take a look at the photographs on the left-hand side on page 34. Unfortunately, they are quite disturbing. If you look, you'll see that they are letters. The top one says, "Note, we have already got rid of several like you. One was found in river just recently." The caption of that says, "Threatening letters were mailed to our home, but so were baskets of fan mail." So it sounds like the author is trying to focus on the positive there instead of the negative, that they receive baskets of fan mail as well as threatening letters like this. Underneath that it says, "Robinson, we are going to kill you if you attempt to enter a ball game at Crossley Field. The Travelers." Well, aren't we glad that Jackie Robinson didn't let these things get in his way? Let's look at page 35. What a great photograph there. What do you notice? I noticed that Jackie Robinson is sitting there. Looks like he's ready to play a game, and he's got a brochure for the 1947 Brooklyn Dodgers in his hand. It says, "Despite the threats on his life and the weight of a people on his shoulders, Dad completed his first year with the Montreal Royals as a most valuable player, or MVP." And boys and girls, we're going to stop here for now. So please be sure to join me on the next recording, which is part 2, and we'll pick up on page 36 and continue through page 39. Thank you for listening so far, and I'll be reading to you again soon.